My name is Carl Shaw, and I look after all the things behind the scenes to make sure we can pull this off for you today. Great to see a couple of familiar faces. Chris Parker, a previous guest. Hello, Chris. How are you? Good to see you all. We are officially now live on Facebook Live and on YouTube Live. So if you are joining us on any of those platforms, please feel free to use the chat facility within those. We'll be also putting some links into those chats for you to be able to review today. For those coming to us on the Zoom call, microphones are muted by default, cameras are turned off. I feel like I say that about 1,000 times a week, but just reminding if there's any new people joining us, which I'm sure there will be. There's a chat facility within Zoom as well. Please feel free to use that chat. I can see that Judith has already posted something there for Julia and Kate, who are our guests today. It's awesome to have you here. We will be kicking off proceedings formally in 45 seconds time. Looking forward to it. Thanks, team.
I feel like we could just have a chat. I'm seeing everybody going, waiting for everything. Let's just have a chat.
Well, thank you, Judith. It is 2 minutes past 12. It is our official kickoff time. We can just have a chat.
Let's just have a chat.
That sounds good.
Hey, everyone.
I'm well, Chris. Good to see you.
We've all officially lost it. Look, it's Michelle. Michelle's been sick and she's back, everybody. Great to see you, Michelle. I'm going to take control of this.
Thank you.
Thank you. And you can mute everyone, so you can exercise the power.
No, it's about connecting and sharing in community, and it's good to see everyone's familiar faces joining us today. Welcome to Few Connect Live for a Thursday. A little bit of housekeeping, then I'll hand over to everybody and we can get underway. Those joining us for the very first time, it is normally a lot more organised than what just happened, but we'll leave it at that. Judith, thank you very much. Love it. My name's Cam Upshaw. If you are on our Zoom call, your microphones normally are muted by default, but obviously they're not at the moment. Cameras, please feel free to turn those on. There is a chat within Zoom. Please feel free to use that. I can see a whole bunch of people tuning in via YouTube Live and Facebook Live, which is fantastic. The chat facility within both those platforms, please use it. There will be an opportunity to ask our guests and our hosts, and look, anyone within the community really. I mean, you can just turn your microphone on and just start talking. It's all good. We're not going to stop you. Alex Tulio, thank God you're here. It's Thursday. I can't wait to get this underway. This is the highlight of my week, this show. I call it a show now. Is it a show?
It feels like a show. And, you know, the funny thing is I can't believe it's taken you, Judith, this long just to go rogue and start talking. We should have actually done this weeks ago.
This is Cam's one opportunity to actually mute me.
Well, welcome everyone, and for our lovely members and regulars, none of this will surprise you whatsoever. And for those of you who might be joining for the first time, welcome. We love having you here, and we're all about growing this community, and you can see that it's about having some fun and some human connection. So that's what we really value, and this is an amazing group. If you don't know me yet, my name is Alex Tulio. I'm the Executive Director of Few. You've met Cam. You've now met Judith, our amazing founder. And if you're new to Few, we are all about the positive progression of women, about supporting women on their career journey. And we work with some amazing women in financial services, both future and senior leaders, and of course, incredible corporate partners that make it all possible as well. So welcome. And, you know, we stream live 3 days a week, though we do have an announcement today, Cam, that tomorrow's a sad day. It's going to be our last Fitness Friday. So for those of you stalwarts who have been rocking up at 8 a.m. every Friday morning for 9 weeks probably now, for our PT session, coinciding with some good news for our amazing trainer, Steve. His gyms are open again very shortly. So tomorrow's going to be our last online fitness session. So for our regulars, make sure we're going to have a good one. And for those who haven't come yet, maybe come for one session. But other than that, we do stream well, still 4 days a week, which I'll talk you through in a second. So as I always say, please do share this link. Jokes aside, and we do have fun. We started this, I think the first week of lockdown, because we wanted to show up and be visible and really keep uniting this industry and make connections. And Cam, you've already asked everyone to link in with someone else on this call. A lot of our members and in this community say, oh, I really struggle to establish and broaden my networks. And I know, Judith, we're going to talk about your upcoming masterclass in a moment, but this whole feel of how do I connect with others and should I hang back? No, now is the time to connect, and you've got a perfect icebreaker here. So please do leverage this community. There are some
Absolutely.
really, it's a really powerful community. You have access to incredible speakers, as well as all of us. So please do take that action, and of course share this link, which I know, Cam, you'll probably put the link in the chat as well.
There it is. Share that link. Put it, beautiful. Copy it, people. Put it into an email. Send it to 5 of your friends. The more people we have on our live streams, the better it is for the rest of our community. So, and Fitness Friday might be going away. We're still here 3 days a week at 12 o'clock, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And our New Few platform is only weeks away. I've been working on this for a long time.
Nice.
And there will be some fitness elements coming to that. So don't worry. We are still going to see you in your Lycra at some stage. But everyone's happy that they're not going to see me in my Lycra from now on.
It's good you turn your video off. So what have we got coming up? So this is free as always for all employees of our corporate partners. So as Cam said, please do copy that link, even if you know someone who might not even be in the industry or work for one of these corporate partners. I know we have quite a few of you that have come in from other professional services. So everyone is welcome. Please do share the link so people can check out and be part of this community as well. So as we've just been saying, we're streaming Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We always say, how is it Thursday again? I'm not sure what happened. And we have some amazing guests coming up. And of course, our 2 brilliant women today who I'll introduce in a moment. We also do have our member only masterclass events every Friday. Now this time slot Friday at 12 is our regular time slot. And that seems to be working really, really well for everyone's calendars. So don't forget, members, that you can just go to the website and register for any of those. We also, from time to time, as you would expect, do have one-off and special events as well. And we've got a really special masterclass with our founder, Judith Beck, next Tuesday. So Judith, do you want to give everyone a bit of a rev up as to why this is going to be a really great and practical masterclass with you next Tuesday?
Yes, absolutely. Well, one of the things that I know for sure is that managers don't interview every day. And Alex, if they do interview every day, well, then that's another master class in itself. That's a whole nother problem. So one of the things I learned running an executive search firm for 25 years is that patterns do form. And there are key questions that are often missed when you're interviewing for staff. So we're going to be going over what those key questions and what I've learned, what patterns I learned over the years, and also what behavioral red flags there are that you should be looking at. And very importantly, the reference check. That's often something that people don't pay enough attention to, and how they do it to make sure that they do get a good reference check is really important. And one of the things with the, now the master class is available to all of our members, but it's also available to any of the managers of all of our corporate partners. So anybody who is a hiring manager and you're a member of one of our corporate partners, a staff member of one of our corporate partners, you are eligible to come to one masterclass. So this is the one, I'm not just saying it because I'm giving it, but this is the one that I would be coming to because it will help you when you are in a situation that you have to hire someone. So I look forward to seeing everyone there. And that one is at 2 o'clock. So that's our last one for 2 o'clock, and then everything else will be at 12.
Thanks, Judith. And in all seriousness, we've talked about loads of things on this show. But one of the things that keeps coming up from both sides is actually, one, how do I find my next job? My next opportunity is now the time. And how do I interview online in this new world? But also on the other side, Judith, as you're saying, there are lots of leaders looking to grow their teams, develop talent, be more adaptive to the circumstances. So there are some really important things here. So don't miss that one. So thanks, Judith. It will always be entertaining and informative from you. Thanks, Cam. And as we always say, for those of you who aren't yet members, we really stand by the service and the value that we provide as being a member. So we invite you to join Judith and I at a confidential group mentoring circle, and of course to a masterclass as well as our guests, to really see for yourself what this amazing community is like and why it transforms so many lives. And thank you, Cam, for putting that link in the chat. All you need to do, if you'd like to try that for yourself, just click on that link and we'll make sure that you get the invitations and all the details. So with all that said, I'd love to welcome our amazing guests today, Kate and Julia, and fabulous photo, ladies. I do love that one. I have a bit of a bio here. So for those of you who don't know Kate and Julia, let me introduce them formally, and then we will get into a great chat. So Kate and Julia want to free women from the fear of money and help them to feel confident to make positive decisions today and for a better tomorrow. Julia Newbould has an academic background in economics and practical experience in journalism, leading editorial teams for financial services publications. She also founded and ran the Stellar Network for BT from 2013 to 2019, supporting more women in financial planning. She's currently the editor-at-large for Money magazine. Kate McCallum is a financial advisor and director of award-winning firm Multifort Financial Services. She is chair of FinSIA's New South Wales Council and national chair of the Association of Financial Advisors, the AFA, Inspire Women's Community, and the winner of AFA's 2014 Female Excellence in Advice Award. Ladies, it is so good to have you here. And on top of all your day jobs, you've also just written a book, just a side detail, The Joy of Money. So welcome.
Thank you very much.
Welcome, Kate.
Thank you.
So it's lovely to have you both here. And I know I've just given a very quick background of you both, but I think it's always lovely to actually just hear in your words a bit of your background and what's led you to this point. So maybe, Julia, let's just start with you. Give us a bit of the Julia Newbould story.
Well, the story was I studied economics. I wanted to be a stockbroker. When I came out of university, it was depressing times, kind of like now. And also I realised that wasn't really what I wanted to do. I wanted to do PR. And so every job I applied for said I needed to get some writing experience. So that made me go and do a cadetship at the local paper. And once I got into journalism, I didn't really want to leave. And I think it's not necessarily the writing. I think more of it's the nosiness and just wanting to understand more about, what makes people tick, what the stories are, a bit more, I love detective fiction. And it's a bit like that, I think.
So watch out, everyone. Julie's analysing our every move as we're here. What about you, Kate? What led you to this point?
Well, this is a story of complementarity. So would you believe I actually wanted to be a journalist, and I did an arts degree. I did economics as part of my arts degree, but I majored in English literature. So you can see the parallels in Julia and my lives. It's just we kind of went the opposite way around. So I ended up, after working in management consulting for a while, ended up looking for an industry that I felt would be challenging and a growth industry, and one where I had, I suppose, opportunities to really expand my knowledge and skills. And so I entered financial services and fell in love with it. And that's where I've been ever since. And I feel like, having established the advice business now 13 years ago, it feels like it's pulled all of that together, sort of the ability to understand some of the ins and outs of financial services, obviously advising clients, but also the communicating piece. So it does bring it all nicely together.
You've both got such great backgrounds and experience. So what led you to come together and to write a book? I mean, that's no mean feat. So I'd love to explore a bit of what actually led you to write The Joy of Money.
So we kept meeting at a lot of industry events where we were thinking of the similar things, and a lot of them were around women and women in finance and women and their finances. And I think, as we talked to friends, we realised, and Kate, when she talked to clients, realised, what the gaps in knowledge were and where people felt that they wanted to do better. And when we talked about it, we thought that our shared knowledge would be appropriate to share with other people, and we could help people not fall into traps that we in financial services tend to know. And also the language that we use in financial services and the jargon is so foreign to people outside the industry. We wanted to translate the language and also the way that people look at money. You know, we as women don't really look at money as an abstract concept. We look at money as how it helps us achieve our other goals. And so in talking, we realised that we could put something together to offer women.
And there are some really powerful messages in there, which I want to get into, because it's a serious and weighty topic. Kate, I know from your perspective, and obviously, you know, as always, I have the luxury and the pleasure of speaking to you both in the lead up to this. And you know, when we were chatting, we were talking about the fact that, you know, money isn't just money, as you're saying, Julia. You know, money isn't just money, and that a lot of women, I think you were saying it was UK, we were talking about the fact that a lot of women don't step into conversations about money, and instead they kind of step back. And I just find this really interesting, because our community is largely financial services. And I think that often, you know, there's probably a lot of people that would go, well, you know, I work in financial services, I've got my money stuff down pat. But I don't reckon that's actually the case. What's your experience there, Kate, around exactly this?
Look, I think the fact that we work in financial services doesn't really make us all that different. You know, you can always talk about the plumber and the leaky pipes. I don't think it's quite that bad. But when it comes to working in financial services versus your own personal finances, I think they are two quite different things. The other thing that we noticed was women would describe their own discomfort with money. And I think the other thing that happens is that when people talk about financial literacy, women get a really bad rap. You know, a lot of the financial literacy outcomes say that women are less equipped than men when it comes to talking about money. And I actually think it's crap. You know, my experience is that is not true. Women get a bad rap. The financial literacy tests, if you want to call them that, the metrics that they use are actually quite mathematical tests. So they're not really about, do you understand the decisions that you're making, or do you understand the context of these decisions? And so I think it does it just further exacerbates this feeling of discomfort, particularly for women around money. And so, you know, as I said, I don't think it matters whether you're financial services or not financial services. When it comes to making decisions, it's about getting past the abstract concept, as Julia said, and making it real and making it part of what it is that you actually want to achieve in your life. And we can talk more about examples of that if you want to.
Oh, look, yeah, I'd love to get into some examples, and also literally let's dig into I love the title for a sec, The Joy of Money. So I want to dig into that, and actually the book, because I know you go from really foundational to quite complex but very practical things in there. What do you, I mean, obviously we're in this very strange time. You know, we know we've got a global pandemic. It's been the last however many months that feel like, 10 years. We're coming out of it, but we don't know really what that looks like. You know, we're in recession, all these ripple effects that are still to happen. So for both of you, I mean, you've got such, not just from the book, but just from what you do in your day-to-day lives and your experience. I mean, what are you seeing around, I guess, the ripple effect of everything that's happening from economically, and also, things like the fact that, so many women, especially, have had to withdraw money from super, and just all these knock-on effects that we're now going to start grappling with. I mean, what's your insight and thoughts on all of that?
I think there's been quite a progression, because if you think about, how we felt when we first got locked down and when everything started happening, the first thing that a lot of us did was, look at our super and see how much, that was falling and so on. And then we kind of got used to, do we have jobs? How are we going to work it? What can we do? What can we do in a positive way? And I think that, 9 weeks on, we're feeling a bit differently, and we're feeling a little bit more stable and ready to move on. People have been affected in different ways. And like most recessions, if you continued to be employed in that time, you didn't feel it as strongly as those who lost jobs or family members who lost jobs. But also, I felt personally very nostalgic at this time. I've been thinking about, all the lessons of frugality that, my parents taught me or my grandparents had to live through. And, I've been reading a lot of, fiction in that area. But I think we talk about, the old lessons and, why you should put aside 3 months of expenses at any time. And I think for the younger generation, they've not really understood why. They've never seen hardships or, been out of work long enough to see that you would ever need to put that much money aside. So I think, one of the other messages that we talk about is just start today, like just do whatever it is you can today and do something. Like this morning, I managed to get my home insurance down a couple of $100s, and I thought, well, that's a win for me.
Absolutely. What about you, Kate?
If I jump into the world of investing, because that's probably where I'm having a lot of my conversations at the moment, one of the things that I was most concerned about was that women would flip to a more conservative allocation for their investment and superannuation money. And it's definitely playing out. So I'm having a lot of conversations with clients around, well, maybe I should change my asset mix. Maybe I should be more conservative than I already am. And so what I'm talking to clients about is just, as we talked about before, getting away from the abstract concept and pairing back to what is it we're really talking about here. So the conversation I had with a client yesterday was around the assets that she's purchased. And I said to her, so, if you think about what you've really bought, you've bought a whole bunch of companies around the world. And those companies may have been devalued when the market fell off a cliff as it did in sort of February, March. But are they still good companies? Do you still think you've got good quality assets? And of course, her answer is yes. You look at some of the companies that are in the portfolio. Yes, they're good companies. It's just that the market became afraid and the price that was applied in the market dropped. And so we talked through that and said, if you think about those companies, do they still have a future? Are they still likely to generate an income going forward? And so just creating, I suppose, a bit more of a reality check about what it is that you're really invested in and taking it from the abstract into the real. And then the second part of that conversation that we talk a lot to clients about is you're matching up the mix of your assets in your superannuation or your investment portfolio with your own investment time horizon. And so it really doesn't matter what happened in the last 30 days or 30 weeks or even, the next 3 years. What we're really talking about for many of us is the next 30 years, because that's the time horizon for most of us that we need our superannuation to be working and creating an income stream and growing in capital value, so that over our lifetime, particularly when we're not working, we've got enough money to sustain us. So it's just changing up that framework and talking very practically. But it is one of my fears that women will become more conservative in the way that they approach their investments. And now's not the time to be doing that if you want to be successful over the long run.
And that, which makes perfect sense, right? And I'm listening to you and thinking, gosh, it feels like, but things are scary and you're wanting me to be less conservative. So that takes me to, and I know the three of us were chatting about this earlier, my mindset seems to have such a big part, doesn't it, in terms of our attitude towards money? Because I think, as both of you said, money actually isn't about money. It's all the other things underneath. So from a mindset perspective, I mean, how can you and your book, what things can women do to really start to step into this, rather than, as I think you said earlier, Kate, step back from these conversations and decisions and making a decision rather than sort of resisting it?
And look, part of it in calling the book The Joy of Money, which obviously is a little tongue in cheek, but we do genuinely want to bring the joy back into money. And if you think about the language that we often use when we talk about savings, it's about putting aside money for an emergency account. And our view is we've got to change up some of this language to actually make it more reflective of what the money's really there for. So, one of the things that Julia and I believe is really important is to actually use different language when we talk about money. So instead of your emergency account, why not call it your surprise account? Instead of your savings account for, your next holiday or your renovations, call it your fun account. So I actually was talking to a client the other day, and I said to them, I want you to put aside some money for your fun account, because then you can go for weekends away, you can have a 60th birthday party, and you can do it all completely guilt-free, because that's what that money is for. Whereas if we call it savings and then you go and you spend it on a great party, you might start to feel a little bit guilty. And that's not what this is about. This is not about everything being about the future you. It's about actually looking after the current self as well, and having fun. And then instead of calling it your retirement savings, maybe it's my future fund, or my future fun. So some of it's about changing up the language. And then I think you also made a really good point, Alex, which is just starting to plan. One of the things that clients tell me is once we start to actually map out their goals over the next 10 years, we start to put some planning in place, the sense of relief that just simply comes from having something down on paper is immense.
Because it is, I mean, it's the fear of the unknown, or the anything, and you've got that head in the sand and you kind of know that you need to get to look at it, but I don't really want to. I think that causes more anxiety than anything else. And language is so important, and I love actually the balance that both of you have got here, because you're right, often it can veer towards it's all about budgeting, and I can't do, and we all know that when that is unsustainable as a habit, it doesn't become a habit, and then we just fail and we feel guiltier, and then we go in the opposite direction. I think often. Julia, can you dip into your book a bit for us? Because I know that your emphasis has very much been around, it's not just about money, it's the intersection of everything. It's career, life, family, practicality. So can you give us a bit of a step-by-step around, the different chapters in the book, and so a bit of an insight for our community here?
Yeah, I guess, on writing it, Kate and I were talking to a lot of our friends, and people wanted to make changes in their life, and either wanted to change jobs, change how much they worked, maybe changed location or relationships or whatever it was. And everything really came down to, could you afford to do that? And so when we were putting together the book, we started with the idea of, well, have an idea of what it is that's important to you. So that's how we started the book. And then we looked at, once you understand that, assess what you have, and then, then you can go further to plan. But, what you were just saying before, Alex, the things that we wanted to be really clear on were, don't beat yourself up about anything that's happened in the past. Just start today. Like, don't feel like a diet that you've fallen off today and you can never go back. Just keep plugging away and doing the little bits that you can do. So we've got a lot of case studies in the book about different women and how they've prepared for their retirement and how they've set themselves up, what might have put them behind someone else in having funds, like putting children in private schools and so on, and just showing women that there's a variety of ways to achieve things, and not everybody's the same. And I think in this time where we've all had this extra time to think, we've been stuck at home and we're learning what it is we can live without, it's changing our priorities for some of us, I think. And I guess when we look at, how our finances have been affected and how our circumstances have been affected, we can then go back and maybe change some of the things that we thought were important to start a new path.
It's a great reflection point, isn't it? Because I think also it's very easy to think, oh, well, if I left it too late, if I don't have, a portfolio of 5 investment properties now, if I left it too late in terms of, because I think it's also really important that you both talk about, actually money, it's about the power of choices, like having choice.
Yeah.
Is the luxury. Like, that's actually what we're talking about here. So what do you say to people who are listening going, oh, well, yeah, I get it, but, I should have done this 20 years ago and I didn't, and feeling a bit defeated by that?
Well, you just didn't. So, you can't go back. So, start with what you have, look at what you have, and then you've got to be a bit realistic, and you've got to adjust whatever it is you want to do according to what you have. If you wanted to retire at 60, but you're so far away from it at 50, maybe you have to think about working part-time when you get to 60, or, trying to set up some sort of side hustle before that. You've got to be a bit realistic. But the more that you understand about money, the more that you can see what your options are.
And I think one of the main things that we do with clients is we actually help them to do the numbers, because sometimes it can seem really scary and it can seem like the target is so far away. But when you do the numbers, you may find that, you know, together with any savings that you have, superannuation balance, and access to government benefits, and the government benefits are often more generous than people realise. With the combination of those things, sometimes you don't need as much as the media headlines imply. And this is, I think, just about being far more aware around what it is that you need, what you can fund yourself, and then what benefits might be available to support you. And as Julia said, you know, there are options. And so, you know, it's about, I think for all of us, it's about making trade-offs. It's about saying, what is it that's most important to me? What is it that's essential in my life? Let me direct my two key resources, which fundamentally are my money and my time, towards those things that are most important. And then make the trade-offs in a direction that makes you as happy as possible. But I really do think that sometimes when the media says things like, you know, you must have $1 million in your super, they make the hurdles so high, and it actually is unrealistic. And I know from the work that I do with clients that that number is not necessary. It's actually not required.
It's good perspective. And I mean, you just mentioned super then. Obviously, you know, we've had a lot of people withdraw from their superannuation in recent months, because that very much came out, you know, sort of that first line of defence and first line of support, I think, when this hit. We had Dee McGrath on, well, I was going to say last week, it was probably the week before now. So Dee's the CEO of Link Group. So they were really kind of at that front line of, I think she said there was something like 760,000 withdrawals that they were processing, you know, from her business. What is the impact of withdrawing, you know, 10 grand or whatever it is from your super account? Like what is the knock-on effect of that?
Well,
I think it depends, Alex. So I think we've got to be really careful, and this is where I probably have a slightly different view to many, but I think if people genuinely needed that money in order to sustain their lives and meet their essential expenses, then, you know, you can't put a value judgment on people taking that money out. If they needed the money, they needed the money.
Yep.
I think the second factor is if the money was held, for example, in cash, so many superannuation funds will have a cash account as part of the option. So if people were withdrawing cash, then again, you're really just topping up your own personal cash by withdrawing it from super, again, assuming that you actually needed the money to live on. And then the third point I would make is if you needed the money, but then you make a commitment to yourself to pay that back at a future time. So it's effectively like you're treating your superannuation like a bank, where you're borrowing your $10,000 to get you through, but you actually make a commitment that when you're back in a better position in future, that you'll actually pay that money back. Then I think that's a very, very different scenario than I'm pulling the money out of super and it's never going back in again. Yeah. And I think that's where many of the commentators have been quite concerned. And I think, Julia, you had a view on people pulling money out, but basically it being a permanent loss of money from superannuation, which has a flow-on impact.
I think one of the best things about it is that people actually realise that their super is theirs. I think there's always been this disconnect that it's somewhere else and that someone else pays money into it and you never see it and you never touch it. Having the access given, I think, has brought people closer to their super. You know, for most people, you don't really think about your super till you're, 50 and you're thinking about retirement and so on. But this suddenly made people focus on the amounts that they have in their accounts. I mean, we saw yesterday that there's been some research on how people have spent that money. You know, obviously there were people who had to spend it all on debt to, bring that down, and that's possibly a good thing. But then there was quite a bit spent on, discretionary products and gambling and so on. So, I think for a lot of people, they panicked, saw that they finally had access to this pot of money that they had and took it out. But as you say, if now that they're more connected with it and they can think that they can put it back for their future, it's all good.
Yeah. Then you're right. There is no one answer. There never is. So we're getting some great comments. Thank you, everyone. And you're not shy. So if you've got questions for these two amazing women, put them in the chat. Now is the time to ask. There is no silly question. But we love, so Judith's now calling her retirement account, it's time to have some fun account. I love it. And thanks for Michelle saying, I love your innovations on changing language around money. So yes, I mean, this brings us back to the fact that the title of your book is The Joy of Money. So you've got a captive audience here. So can you give us a few really practical tips or some things that we can start to reframe in our minds, that we can take some really practical ways to start getting the joy back in money in our day-to-day?
One of my favorite ones is our concept of conscious cash flow. And you said this before, you know, budgeting is about frugality and giving up and cutting back. And it's got all of these negative connotations. And so what we wanted to do was turn this whole thing on its head and say, no, actually, being conscious about your cash flow is not about being frugal. It's actually about being super smart, because what you're doing is you're spending every single dollar of your hard-earned cash. You're spending it in a way that's conscious, so you're spending it to give you more joy. And so it's about doing an audit of your expenditure, so income and expenditure. It's about then saying, where am I spending money that I don't get any benefit from it? And some classic examples, and we share these in the book, are things like, you know, not appropriately insulating your house, so you're spending too much on energy bills, not having things like LED lighting, so that, you know, again, you're spending too much on energy bills. A classic one, my husband and I had separate Spotify accounts, and then my gorgeous 20-something son said, you do realise, Mum, that you can have a family account and save some money. So I combined them, and, you know, so look, it might not be a huge amount of money, but little things like that where it's just wastage of funds, but I still have my Spotify account. And then there's things where, you know, we often just spend money in lazy ways. You know, you're out, I know when my kids were younger, we'd go to a sporting event and the kids would want to buy a Gatorade at the canteen at the sports ground, and suddenly you find that you've spent $20 on Gatorade and a couple of hot dogs. So, you know, we switched that up and started to actually take our own lunch. But it wasn't boring. We would go and we'd buy sushi from their favorite sushi restaurant along the way. And then there's money that you spend to give you gains. And so they're things like investing, putting money into superannuation, making sure you keep your insurances up to protect yourself and your family, and obviously education and skilling and your human capital. So I think it's just flipping the way that you think about money, so that spending is more conscious, so that you're making sure that the dollars are working in a way that gives you the most joy.
And, you know, one of the other things is that, you know, as you said before, we're working in financial services and we're earning probably more than average wages, but we're spending up to what we earn. And it's not those people who are earning the highest wages that are doing the best. It's people who are, you know, putting some money aside and being more conscious with their spending. You know, from working at Money Magazine over the past few months, you know, I'm learning all these ideas about how to be frugal at all times and what we should be focused on, and, you know, keep changing our utilities providers, for example, to get better deals, because every dollar that you save is money that you don't have to earn, you know, and that's a great thing.
Yeah, so the things I love from all of that, one, what you're talking about, both of you, they're really easy, practical things. I have to confess, the minute I hear budget, I'm like, but I really want to buy shoes. I know it's very stereotypical, but I do have a bit of a shoe fetish.
Yeah, that's perfectly okay. If that's what it gives you pleasure, that's great. And, you know, we often, as women, we're a bit of list makers. And, you know, Kate says you have your separate accounts. You can have more than, you know, one fun account. You can have your shoe account. You can have your theatre account. You can have, you know, your gifts account, or whatever it is that brings you pleasure. You know, put them all aside and, you know, figure that out.
I love that. So everyone, you heard it. I just was given permission here to spend money on shoes. But in all seriousness, though, I think this reframe, like what you're both talking about, right, this is now we're getting into actually this is where you can successfully change habits, reframe things so they're not negative and not doing without. And they're really practical things. Like, I'm sure, I don't know how many of us would have an example like you, Kate, about the 2 Spotify, just the silly stuff that we're so busy doing and we don't check in. Julia, you said right at the start, well, I just got my home insurance down, so that was a win. So it's the small stuff of being really conscious. So I really love
makes you feel good. Each time you get one of those wins, it makes you feel good.
Absolutely. And I think what you've touched on as well is also really important. And I'll get whatever the statistic is, I'll get it wrong. But there's what's that stat, that whenever you get, a pay rise, so if you get a pay rise of, 10% more or whatever it is, or you get that bonus or whatever it is, generally that's what your expenditure will go up by, because you're right. The tendency is to spend to the level rather than actually be more conscious, to your point. And we've got a question here. One thing I've always struggled with is, what is a sensible percentage to put towards a fun account? What's some guidance here?
So in the book, we do say there's lots of different rules of thumb that people use around allocating spending. And what we do is we use the 50, 30, 20 example. So 50% for essentials, 30% for your short-term savings and fun, and then 20% for the 30% is, in the book we talk about it as being for your wants, so things that you enjoy buying, like shoes and good fashion, and then the remaining 20% is what goes to savings. And then with that 20% that goes into savings, you can then split that into 50% for your future use. So that's making sure that you're topping up for that long-term sustainable income that we need when we eventually hang up our boots and no longer work. 30% for fun. So that's your sort of medium-term things. So, I love to ski. I'm a mad skier. And so we have a fun account for our skiing holidays, and then 20% for the unexpected. So it's 50, 30, 20, and then 50, 30, 20 again when you split it. So I hope that helps. But it's definitely in the book, and we talk through some examples about that. One of the questions, interestingly, we often get is, living in a city like Sydney or Melbourne, often people have higher costs of accommodation. So their essentials component can be almost completely dominated by the cost of rent or mortgage. And our view on that is that where you live is actually a huge impact on your ability to save. And so it's something to be, I think, quite conscious of when you make a decision about where you choose to live and how big a mortgage you take on. But if you do make a decision to live in a more expensive area and have a higher cost of accommodation, then it doesn't just add to the expenses. You've got to adjust the wants down so that you are still ensuring that you've actually got money for your future you and the fund savings as well.
I love it. There's so much gold just in this, and well done, Rosemary Irons. You beat me to it. Rosemary said, well, where can we get this book? So how do we, because I know we'd love to know how we can find out more and how we can buy the book. So how do we do that?
You can buy it at most bookshops, but if you want to put a little bit of money into your super at the same time, you can buy it through a super rewards account through Book Depository or Booktopia. And that way you're putting a bit of money into your super and you're getting the book as well delivered.
Well, that's great. So everyone can see Kate's holding up there, The Joy of Money. And I love that you just mentioned, Julie, then super awards. I was only speaking to Pascal the other day. So she'll be on in the next couple of weeks. And that's amazing to combine the two. So that's fantastic. So thank you both so much. I really appreciate your time. I know we all do. And we all know where to get the book. So we can all go and find that, and also look up super awards as well, as Julia suggests. So thank you so much, ladies. Any final pearls of wisdom that you would like to leave with our audience before we sign off for the day?
Just to follow what Kate was saying about the savings, pay yourself first. When you are putting your savings aside, do that before you do any of your other things. Otherwise, it's really hard to meet all your expenses and your wants and so on. If you put your savings away first and have it taken out of your pay before it even hits your spending accounts, that's the safest way to do it.
I love it. It's those simple rules that we need to actually execute on that make all the difference, aren't they? Thank you so much, Kate. Thank you, Julia. It's been a really great session. Love chatting to you both. And thank you, everyone, for your comments as always. Don't forget The Joy of Money. It will be a fantastic and practical read. So make sure you get your copy. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And I know also Cam always reminds me, and I forget, you can also follow us on YouTube. Cam, how do we do that? Right there. It's like I say it and it appears in the chat.
Just head over to that link, and it would really, really help us if everyone on this call went to that link and clicked the subscribe to our YouTube channel. So if you can do that for us, we'll keep coming live 3 days a week for you. There you go.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, as we always say, we appreciate so much that you choose to spend an hour of your time with us. Please do let us know what you'd like to hear more of, what you want to see in masterclasses, any amazing speakers. Thank you so much again, Kate and Julia. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on. Have a brilliant Thursday afternoon, everyone. See you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks. Mm-hmm.